Hi everyone, welcome back to BookFuel English. I'm really glad you are here today. In this audiobook, I want to share a quiet but powerful story with you. It is called The Chair That Stayed Empty. This story is about love that does not shout. It is about someone who waits without asking, gives without complaining, and stays present even when they feel unseen. It is also about us. The times we are busy, distracted, and believe we have more time. Please listen slowly. You don't need to rush. If you feel emotional, it's okay to pause. This story is not just for listening practice. It is for the heart. It is for anyone who has loved, waited, or wished they noticed sooner. Let's learn English together through this story. And more importantly, let's learn how to be present. Now take a deep breath and let the story begin. You do not notice the chair at first. You never do. It sits there quietly, pulled out just enough to show intention, never demanding attention. It waits. And because it waits, you assume it will always be there. This is how the most important things in your life survive unnoticed. They do not shout. They do not interrupt. They adapt to your pace, your schedule, your ambition. While you chase progress, something else is practicing patience. While you run forward, something stays behind, holding space. You tell yourself you are building a future. You say you are busy for the right reasons. You believe that effort is love, that providing is the same as being present. And slowly, without cruelty, without bad intention, you trade attention for achievement. Comfort replaces awareness. Routine replaces responsibility. The chair becomes part of the background. It is there at the same time every day. Same place, same silence. Someone saves it without asking. Someone waits without reminding. At first, this feels safe, predictable, stable. You like stability. Stability tells you nothing is wrong, but stability can be dangerous when it makes you stop looking. You answer questions quickly. You promise time later. You say next time without hearing how often you say it. The chair stays empty more nights than full, and no one complains. No one fights. No one begs. Silence protects you from urgency, and that is the trap. What waits quietly is easy to forget. What adapts easily is easy to neglect. The chair does not move closer to you. It does not block your way. It simply remains, trusting that one day you will choose to sit. You mistake this patience for permanence. You believe that what is steady cannot disappear. You believe that what has always been there does not need your attention today. You believe that love will wait until you finish becoming who you want to be. But presence is not guaranteed. It is practiced. Every time you choose distraction over connection, the distance grows without sound. Every time you delay attention, something learns to live without it. You do not feel the loss yet because nothing has broken. The chair is still there. The routine still holds. This is how people lose what matters without ever meaning to. Not through cruelty, not through anger, but through postponement, through assuming that tomorrow is promised, that routines repeat forever, that patience has no limit. You are not a bad person for this. You are human, but awareness begins when excuses end, and responsibility begins when comfort is questioned. This is not about guilt or blame. It is about choice, attention, and the courage to pause. What you choose next will shape what remains and what quietly disappears from your life, starting with this very moment. That is why this moment matters, because the most dangerous losses are not sudden, they are silent. They happen while you are busy being responsible, while you are proud of your discipline in one area and careless in another. The chair is not asking for much. It is not asking for perfection. It is asking for one thing only: presence, not later, not someday. Now. This is your warning, spoken softly but clearly. What feels stable may already be slipping. What waits without complaint may not wait forever. And what you do not notice today may be what you miss tomorrow. Before the story moves forward, understand this: the chair has always been ready for you. The question is not whether it will stay. The question is whether you will finally notice it. Chapter 1. Dinner at 8. Dinner was always at 8, not because it had to be, but because that was how it had settled into the shape of life. 8 meant evening had arrived. 8 meant the day was almost done. 8 meant there was a place to return to, even if you arrived late. The table was set the same way every night. Plates placed evenly, glasses filled halfway. One chair pulled out slightly more than the others, as if someone had just stood up and planned to return. You notice the table, but not the intention behind it. Intention does not demand attention. It waits. You arrived with your body, but your mind stayed elsewhere. Thoughts of work followed you in. Messages waited in your pocket. Plans for tomorrow crowded the present. You sat down, nodded, asked the familiar question, "How was your day?" The answer came just as familiar: "Fine. Busy." You accepted it easily. It sounded like progress. Busy meant useful. Busy meant responsible. Busy meant you were doing what you were supposed to do. Food was passed across the table. Someone made sure your plate was full. Someone noticed what you liked and what you avoided. You ate while thinking about what still needed to be done, what you had not finished, what you needed to prepare for. You were there, but not really there. Conversation moved lightly, safe topics, short answers, nothing heavy enough to slow the meal down. Silence slipped in between sentences, but it did not feel uncomfortable. It felt earned, like rest. The chair across from you remained steady, always waiting, always ready. Someone sat there every night, even when you did not. Someone believed the seat mattered enough to be saved. You did not think about this. You did not need to. The chair had never disappeared before. You told yourself this was normal. Families eat like this. People talk like this. Life gets busy. Love does not need constant attention. Love understands. This belief wrapped around you like comfort. It allowed you to relax into routine. It told you nothing was wrong. It told you you were present enough. But presence is not measured by location. It is measured by attention. You listened just enough to respond. You nodded at the right moments. You smiled when expected. You were skilled at appearing engaged while your mind drifted somewhere else. This skill had helped you survive pressure, deadlines, responsibility. It also taught you how to miss things quietly. Someone across the table noticed, not with anger, not with accusation, with acceptance. They adjusted the rhythm of conversation to match your distance. Shorter sentences, fewer questions, more pauses. They waited. Dinner ended the same way it always did. Plates cleared, glasses moved to the sink. Someone stayed behind to clean, even when they were tired. You stood up quickly, already halfway into the next part of your night. "I'll help next time," you said. Next time sounded reasonable. Next time always does. The chair was pushed back in, gently, carefully, as if it mattered how it rested. You did not notice that either. Care is quiet. That is why it hides so well. Night after night, dinner repeated itself. 8 o'clock arrived. Food was prepared. The chair waited. Sometimes you were late. Sometimes you missed it entirely. When you did arrive, relief settled in you. You made it. You were there. That counted for something. You believed effort outside the house earned you absence inside it. You believed love could survive on history alone. You believed providing meant caring deeply even when attention was thin. No one corrected you. That was the kindness. And also the danger. The waiting never came with complaint. No one asked you to slow down. No one demanded more. The chair did not scrape loudly across the floor. It did not block the doorway. It simply remained in place, holding the shape of someone who chose to stay. You learned to rely on this patience. You learned that nothing bad happened when you were absent. Dinners still happened. Plates were still filled. Life moved forward without interruption. This taught you the wrong lesson, because the absence of conflict does not mean the presence of connection. Silence is not proof of peace. Sometimes it is proof of endurance. The chair began to feel permanent to you. Part of the furniture, something that belonged to the room, not to a person. You stopped seeing it as an invitation and started seeing it as background. And background is easy to forget. On nights when you did sit longer, when your phone stayed face down, when your attention lifted for a moment, you felt something shift. The air felt warmer. Conversation slowed. Someone across from you seemed lighter, more present. But these moments were rare, and because they were rare, you treated them as optional. You did not realize that attention is not something you give when convenient. It is something you practice until it becomes who you are. Dinner at 8 continued. The routine held. The chair stayed ready. Someone kept waiting, believing consistency meant commitment, believing presence would return on its own. You believed the same. This is how neglect hides best. Inside calm evenings, inside warm meals, inside familiar questions answered without depth. Nothing feels urgent. Nothing feels broken. Everything feels fine. Until one day the chair feels different. Not because it moved, not because it disappeared, but because something inside you finally notices the weight of what has been waiting all along. And when that moment comes, comfort will no longer protect you. It will expose you. Dinner at 8 was never just a meal. It was an invitation you kept postponing, a moment you assumed would repeat forever, a chance to practice presence that you believed could wait. The chair stayed ready. Someone stayed waiting. And you kept telling yourself you were there without asking whether you were truly present. Chapter 2. Providing instead of loving. You learned early that effort equals value, that working harder makes you useful, that staying late proves commitment. Somewhere along the way, you absorbed a dangerous idea without questioning it, that love can be measured by sacrifice, and sacrifice can be scheduled. You tell yourself you are doing this for the future, for security, for stability, for everyone you care about. You repeat this story until it feels responsible, even noble. You believe that providing is proof of love, and that one day, when things slow down, you will give your time freely. But time does not work like that. You stay later at work because it feels productive. You answer messages during dinner because it feels efficient. You miss moments now because you believe missing them is temporary. Presence feels optional, inconvenient, something you can return to when the important work is done. This is where the confusion begins. Providing feels active, loving feels still. Providing has results you can see. Loving requires attention you must feel. Effort is praised. Presence is expected but rarely noticed. So you choose the thing that gives you feedback, not the thing that asks you to slow down. Money grows. Responsibility grows. Your sense of importance grows. And quietly, without protest, connection thins. You do not mean to neglect anyone. You do not intend harm. You are not cruel. You are focused. And focus, when misdirected, can become a form of blindness. You believe you are showing up in the way that matters most. You believe your effort will speak for you. You believe your intention will protect you from consequence. But intention does not cancel impact. You come home tired and tell yourself it is enough that you came home at all. You sit at the table but keep your mind elsewhere. You listen with half attention and promise full attention later. You are physically present, emotionally absent, and you call this balance. The problem is not that you work hard. The problem is that you work hard in the wrong direction. You confuse exhaustion with devotion. You confuse sacrifice with love. You confuse being needed with being connected. And because providing brings visible results, you trust it more than presence, which leaves no proof behind. Money can be counted. Time cannot be returned. Every hour you give to building something external feels justified. You can explain it. You can defend it. But every moment you withhold from connection disappears without argument. No one invoices you for absence. No one sends reminders for missed attention. So you keep going. You tell yourself stories that sound reasonable. They understand. This is temporary. I'll make it up later. These thoughts protect you from discomfort. They allow you to keep moving without questioning direction. But love is not a future project. It is a daily practice. You cannot store presence for later use. You cannot save attention in advance. You cannot promise love tomorrow and expect it to fill today's absence. This is the contrast you avoid facing. Money versus memory. Effort versus attention. Intention versus impact. You may build comfort, but comfort does not build closeness. You may build security, but security does not replace presence. You may build a future, but relationships only live in the present. The person waiting does not argue with your logic. They do not interrupt your plans. They adapt. They adjust expectations. They learn to accept less without asking for more. And because they do not complain, you assume everything is fine. Silence becomes permission. You believe that love waits because it always has. You believe patience has no limit because it has not reached yours yet. You believe consistency in routine is proof of consistency in connection. But routine can hide neglect better than chaos ever could. Providing allows you to feel strong. Loving asks you to be available. Strength is celebrated. Availability is vulnerable. One makes you feel in control. The other asks you to slow down and risk noticing what you might have missed. So you choose control. You convince yourself that one day you will have time, that one day you will sit longer, listen deeper, ask better questions. You imagine a future version of yourself who is less busy, more present, more gentle. But that version of you is built by the choices you make now, not later. Every time you choose work over attention, you are training yourself. Every time you delay connection, you are shaping habit. And habits do not disappear when circumstances change. They follow you. You think love will understand delay. Love does not keep score. but it does respond to absence, not with anger, with distance. The person waiting begins to expect less. They stop asking. They stop interrupting your focus. They stop believing their presence competes with your ambition. This feels like support to you. It is actually surrender. Providing instead of loving feels safe because it avoids discomfort. It avoids difficult conversations. It avoids sitting still long enough to notice what someone else feels. It keeps you busy, important, and distracted. But distraction has a cost. One day you will look back and realize you were never too busy to love. You were just too focused on proving your value in ways that did not require emotional risk. You will realize that effort without attention is empty, that sacrifice without presence is incomplete, that love postponed is not love preserved. This is the belief that breaks people quietly, that love can wait, that presence can be delayed, that connection can be rescheduled without consequence. It cannot. Love does not demand perfection, it demands participation. It asks you to sit down, to listen without checking the time, to be fully where you already are. Providing builds structures, loving builds meaning. You must choose which one defines you, because if you continue believing that love can be postponed safely, you will wake up one day surrounded by everything you worked for and realize that what mattered most learned how to live without you. And by the time you are ready to sit down, the chair may still be there, but the one who waited may not be. Chapter 3, I'll join next time. It starts with one missed meal, not because you chose to stay away, but because something ran late. A meeting, a call, a task that felt important in the moment. You send a short message. I'll join next time. It sounds harmless, responsible, temporary. The food stays on the table longer than usual. It grows cold. Someone waits anyway. Next time feels close enough to touch. You believe it. You trust it. You do not realize that next time is not a moment. It is a habit forming quietly. Missed meals become familiar, not frequent enough to feel serious, just often enough to feel normal. You stop apologizing fully. You start explaining instead. Explanations feel cleaner, less emotional. They protect you from discomfort. I was busy. It couldn't be helped. I'll make it tomorrow. Tomorrow listens politely. It does not argue. The chair stays empty more often now. Still, nothing explodes. No one raises their voice. No one demands your attention. Peace remains, and peace becomes your proof that everything is fine. This is how distance grows without conflict. Silence does not accuse. Silence adapts. Silence adjusts its expectations downward until they fit what you offer. You mistake this for understanding. You call it support. The table is cleared without comment. Food is wrapped and placed away. Someone eats later, alone, without making it noticeable. They learn how to shrink disappointment into routine. You arrive home to a quiet house and feel relief instead of concern. Quiet feels earned. Quiet feels deserved. Quiet lets you rest without explanation. You sit down somewhere else. You scroll. You plan. You prepare for tomorrow. You tell yourself you will do better when things slow down. Things do not slow down. They rarely do. I'll join next time becomes your favorite sentence. It costs little to say and buys you freedom from the present moment. It promises connection without requiring it. But promises repeated too often lose their meaning. Short replies replace conversation. Okay, later. I'm tired. These words pass between you and the person waiting, thinner each time. They no longer expect depth. They adjust to surface. peace remains. But peace is not connection. The chair remains too. That is what confuses you. If something were truly wrong, the chair would disappear. If the waiting mattered less, someone would stop saving the seat. But the seat is still there, every night, quiet and patient. You do not notice that patience is changing shape. The person waiting stops checking the time, stops asking when you will arrive, stops reheating food more than once. They do not announce this shift. They simply adapt. You mistake adaptation for acceptance. The silence between you grows wider, but it feels calm. No sharp edges, no emotional storms. You believe this calm is proof of maturity, of understanding, of love that does not demand. But love that stops demanding is love that is learning to survive without response. You tell yourself that arguments are worse than distance, that peace is better than tension. You choose silence over discomfort, not realizing that silence, when left unchecked, becomes a language of its own, a language of absence. Meals pass without you, then days, then routines adjust around your absence so smoothly that you barely notice when you stop being expected. The house learns your pattern and stops waiting for disruption. This is not punishment, it is protection. The person waiting protects themselves from disappointment by expecting less. They protect you from guilt by asking less. Everyone adapts. Everyone stays polite. Nothing explodes. And that is the danger, because explosions demand attention. Silence does not. Silence lets you keep going, believing everything is stable. Silence lets neglect hide behind calm. The chair begins to feel symbolic without you realizing it. It becomes less an invitation and more a reminder of what could have happened, what still might happen. You tell yourself you will notice when it matters, but mattering is not announced. I'll join next time stops feeling like a promise and starts feeling like background noise. You say it automatically. You believe it less each time, but you keep saying it because it avoids confrontation. You do not ask how it feels to wait. You do not ask what it costs. You assume that because no one complains, no one is hurting. Silence trains you to underestimate pain. The peace you protect becomes a space where connection quietly drains away. You're not rejected. You're not pushed out. You are simply less included. And because this happens gradually, you accept it without resistance. One night you notice the chair has been pushed in, not dramatically, just neatly, as if no one expected it to be used. The sight registers briefly, then fades. You are tired, you let it go. This is how lies form, not through intention, but through repetition. Next time becomes a story you tell yourself to feel responsible while remaining absent. It allows you to delay without guilt. It allows you to keep choosing later over now, but later is learning to live without you. Peace without presence is not peace. It is quiet neglect. Silence without connection is not calm. It is distance wearing a friendly face. The person waiting has not given up. They have adjusted. An adjustment, when done too often, becomes separation. You believe you are still part of the routine. You believe you are still expected. You believe the chair is waiting because it always has. But waiting changes people. It teaches them how to endure without hope, how to accept without asking, how to love without expecting response. And when that happens, nothing breaks loudly. Something simply stops reaching for you. I'll join next time feels harmless, until one day you realize next time has been happening without you for a very long time. The chair stayed empty. The silence stayed polite. And you stayed convinced that peace meant everything was fine. By the time you begin to question that belief, the distance will already know your name, and next time will no longer be waiting for you to arrive. Chapter 4. When he stopped asking. You notice the change too late to stop it, but early enough to feel it. It does not arrive loudly. It does not demand explanation. It arrives as absence in places where presence used to live. The questions stop first. No more, "Are you coming tonight?" No more, "What time will you be home?" No more reminders, gentle or otherwise. At first, this feels like relief. You tell yourself it means understanding, maturity, respect for your schedule. You believe love has finally learned how to fit around your life without friction. You do not realize that what you call respect is actually retreat. He stops asking because asking started to hurt. Each unanswered question carried hope. Each delayed reply carried disappointment. Each promise of next time carried weight that settled quietly on his chest. Asking required effort. Hoping required courage. And over time, both became too heavy to carry without return. So he adapts. Adaptation looks peaceful from the outside. No conflict, no tension, no uncomfortable conversations. The house grows calmer. You move more freely. You are not interrupted. You are not pressured. Silence creates space, and you mistake space for harmony. But harmony is built together. Silence is built alone. He no longer waits by the door, no longer listens for footsteps, no longer checks the time. He eats when food is ready, not when you arrive. He learns how to finish meals without conversation. He learns how to fill evening with small tasks that do not require attention. You notice this, but not fully. You tell yourself he is independent, strong, adjusted. You admire this without understanding the cost. The chair is still there, but it feels different now. Not pulled out in expectation, just placed correctly, neatly, without intention. You do not question this. You are tired, you let it pass. Expectation turns into acceptance quietly. Hope turns into resignation without announcement. He stops asking because answers stop changing anything. Each question once held the belief that tonight might be different, that presence might return, that attention might come back naturally. But when belief meets delay too many times, it learns to protect itself. So he stops reaching. You feel a subtle unease, like something familiar has shifted position. The house sounds different, not louder, quieter, thicker. Silence now carries weight, not rest. You sense this, but you postpone it like everything else. Later, you think, when things calm down, when work eases, when you have more time to notice, later has become your language. He does not confront you. He does not accuse. He does not demand change. That would require energy he no longer has. Love has been asking for too long. Instead, he accepts. Acceptance looks kind. It feels generous. It feels like understanding. But acceptance without communication is not peace. It is surrender. He begins living around your absence, not waiting for its end. He plans days without you, makes decisions without checking, adjusts expectations without discussion. He does not do this to punish you. He does it to survive disappointment. You sense the distance now, but it feels manageable. You tell yourself nothing serious has happened. After all, nothing has broken. There are no raised voices, no tears, no dramatic turning point. This is how loss begins, without drama. You notice that conversations are shorter, not tense, just thinner. You speak about tasks, not thoughts, logistics, not feelings. The depth that once waited patiently between sentences has stepped back. He listens but differently now, without anticipation, without leaning forward, without expecting more. You feel this shift in your body before you understand it in your mind. A slight tightening, a small discomfort, something you do not want to name, so you ignore it. You tell yourself this is adulthood, that relationships change, that intensity fades, that this is what stability looks like. You use reasonable explanations to protect yourself from uncomfortable truth. But truth does not need your permission to exist. He no longer reminds you because reminders stopped working. He no longer hopes because hope became painful. He no longer asks because asking requires belief, and belief has limits. This is not anger. This is exhaustion. Love has not disappeared. It has withdrawn to preserve itself. You see him sitting alone more often now, not waiting, just being. You see him move through routines with quiet efficiency. You see how little he asks from the world. You think he is okay, but okay is not the same as connected. The silence grows heavier each day, not because words are missing, but because intention is. Silence is no longer a pause. It is a wall. For the first time, unease settles in you without invitation. You feel the urge to ask what is wrong, but you stop yourself. Asking now feels like admitting you missed something important. So you delay. You tell yourself you will talk when things slow down, when you are less tired, when you are more prepared. You believe timing is the issue, not attention. But attention delayed is attention denied. He notices your hesitation. He sees you almost ask, then turn away. He understands more than you realize. And understanding without conversation deepens the gap. You still believe you have time. You believe this phase will pass on its own. That presence will return naturally without effort. That love will reset when circumstances improve. But love does not reset. It responds. Expectation once lived here. Now acceptance sits quietly in its place. Hope once leaned forward. Now resignation stands still. And the most devastating part is this. Nothing forces you to act. No crisis. No argument. No breaking point. Just a slow, quiet shift that asks you to notice on your own. You feel the weight of silence now, but you convince yourself it can wait, that naming it will make it worse, that peace is better than discomfort, so you choose delay again. He has stopped asking. And because he has stopped asking, you stop answering questions that no longer come. This is the moment that decides everything, not because something ended, but because something changed direction. Love did not leave. It stepped back. It stopped reaching. It learned to exist without response. You are not abandoned. You are being adjusted out of. And unless you choose to sit down, to speak, to notice, to act now instead of later, this quiet acceptance will harden into distance. The silence will not break. It will settle. And one day you will realize that the moment he stopped asking was not a sign of peace. It was the sound of love laying itself down, too tired to reach for you again. Chapter 5. The Sound of Cutlery. You start hearing it before you understand it. The sound is small, ordinary, almost forgettable. Metal touching ceramic, a fork against a plate, a knife resting after use. The sound of cutlery becomes louder than conversation ever was. Meals are quieter now. Not tense, not sad, just quiet. You notice it when you walk past the kitchen and hear someone eating alone. The rhythm is slow, careful, unrushed, each movement deliberate, as if there is no one to impress, no one to keep pace with. You pause for a second, not long enough to stop, just long enough to register the sound. You tell yourself it means nothing. The chair sits across from the table, pushed in, not waiting, not pulled out, just there, balanced, neutral. It does not ask for attention. It does not accuse. It simply exists, holding the shape of what used to happen. You hear cutlery again another night, and another. The sound becomes familiar, predictable, almost comforting. It signals that dinner is happening without you, and life is moving forward without disruption. That should worry you. But worry requires stillness, and stillness feels dangerous when you are used to movement. You keep walking, you keep planning, you keep believing that noticing something is the same as addressing it. It is not. Silence changes shape when it is no longer shared. When two people eat together, silence rests between them like space. When one person eats alone, silence sits beside them like a presence. Heavy, patient. You feel this difference without naming it. You sense it in your body. A slight tightening, a faint discomfort. Regret has not arrived yet, only awareness. The sound of cutlery follows a rhythm you did not set. Bite, pause, chew, swallow. The rhythm belongs to someone who has stopped waiting for interruption, someone who no longer expects conversation to break the quiet. You remember when meals were noisy, when chairs scraped, when voices overlapped, when small disagreements filled space. That noise meant connection. You did not appreciate it then. Noise felt messy, inconvenient, inefficient. Now efficiency has won. Movement dominates your life. You move from task to task, screen to screen, goal to goal. Motion feels productive. Motion feels like progress. Stillness feels like falling behind. But meaning lives in stillness. The sound of cutlery is slow because it does not rush. It does not need to arrive anywhere else. It does not check the time. It does not multitask. It exists fully in the moment. You do not. You eat standing sometimes, quickly, distracted. You barely taste the food. Eating becomes another task to complete, not a moment to inhabit. You forget that meals were once about more than fuel. The chair reminds you of this without speaking. You notice how the table looks smaller now, not physically but emotionally. It holds fewer possibilities, fewer pauses, fewer chances for something unexpected to be said. The person eating alone does not complain. They do not sigh loudly. They do not exaggerate the sound to be noticed. They eat quietly, neatly, with practiced calm. The cutlery touches the plate with intention, not impatience. That sound stays with you longer than it should. Noise fills your world everywhere else. Notifications, voices, traffic, pressure. The world demands your attention constantly. And yet the most meaningful sound is this one you keep ignoring. Metal against ceramic, silence between bites, a chair that remains unused. This is contrast you cannot escape forever. Movement has given you momentum, but it has also taken your awareness. You have learned how to stay busy enough to avoid noticing what slows you down emotionally. Stillness feels uncomfortable because stillness asks questions. Why is the chair empty? Why is the meal quiet? Why does this feel heavier than it should? You hear cutlery again and realize you have memorized the sound, the timing, the pause between movements. It has become a pattern. Patterns are how the brain learns permanence. Regret does not hurt yet. It nudges, it taps gently, it says, pay attention. It does not accuse you. It invites you to look. You do not accept the invitation. You tell yourself there will be time later, that this phase will pass, that work will ease, that connection will return naturally. You trust routine more than awareness. But routine is what created this distance. The chair becomes louder precisely because no one speaks about it. Its silence competes with the noise of your life and begins to win. You start to notice the absence of sound that used to exist. Laughter, casual questions, shared reactions. Those sounds did not announce their importance when they were present. Their absence does. Silence has layers now. There is the silence of a quiet house, the silence of a finished meal, the silence of something that no longer expects response. The sound of cutlery is not sad. That is what unsettles you. It is calm, steady, resigned. It suggests adaptation, not waiting. Waiting sounds different. Waiting sounds restless, hopeful, open. This sound is closed. You feel discomfort settle in your chest, light but persistent. It does not demand action yet. It simply asks you to acknowledge it. You acknowledge it and then you move on. You do not sit down. You do not pull the chair out. You do not say anything. You notice and you delay. Again. This is the most dangerous moment. Not ignorance. Not cruelty. Awareness without action. The sound of cutlery fades as the meal ends. Plates are cleared. The table is wiped. The chair remains untouched. Everything resets for tomorrow as if nothing happened. But something did. You learned how easy it is to notice and do nothing. How simple it is to feel discomfort and postpone responsibility. How quietly connection can be replaced by routine. The chair has become a witness. The table has become a stage for absence. The cutlery has become a voice, and you have become skilled at ignoring it. You tell yourself that noticing counts for something. That awareness is the first step. That action can come later, but awareness without action does not change direction. It only sharpens regret. You heard the sound. You felt the discomfort. You understood the meaning, and still you chose not to sit down. The chair stayed empty. The cutlery stayed honest. And you stayed in motion, hoping movement would silence what stillness revealed. This is the moment you will remember later. Not because something ended, but because you noticed everything and did nothing. Chapter 6. The Last Meal Together. You do not know it is the last meal. That is what makes it dangerous. It arrives disguised as normal, familiar, safe. The kind of moment you have postponed without fear because it has always returned before. Dinner happens without effort that night. 8 o'clock arrives, and for once, you are there. Not late, not rushed. You sit down as if this is how it has always been, as if nothing ever slipped. The chair is pulled out. That detail lands softly. You barely notice it, but something in the room shifts. Space opens. Expectation returns. Cautious but present. The chair does not celebrate. It simply holds. Conversation starts the way it always does. Simple words, easy exchanges. Nothing important enough to remember, you think. You talk about the day, about small things, about plans that sound distant and unfinished. Someone asks how you are, and you answer honestly but briefly. Someone listens the way they always have, fully, without interruption, without urgency. Food is passed across the table. Plates touch. Cutlery moves. The sounds feel different tonight. Not lonely, not heavy, shared, balanced. The rhythm slows without effort. You feel it, but you do not question it. This is how assumptions work. They keep you comfortable. You sit longer than usual. Your phone stays face down. Your body relaxes into the chair. For a moment, presence feels natural again, like something you never lost. Someone across from you smiles softly, not the practiced smile of adaptation. Something warmer, something hopeful. You do not realize how rare this has become. You eat slowly, taste the food, comment on it. A small laugh escapes, easy and unforced. The room feels alive again, not because of noise, but because of attention. This is the cruelest kind of moment, the one that convinces you there is time. You think, this is good, we are fine. Whatever felt off before was temporary. You tell yourself this quietly without examining it too closely. Someone tells a short story, not dramatic, not emotional, just something remembered. You listen without rushing to reply. You nod. You stay. The chair does its job. It holds you in place. You do not notice the weight of what is happening, how rare this stillness has become, how carefully it is being protected. You do not see how much effort it takes for someone else to believe in this moment again. You assume it will repeat. That is the mistake. The conversation stays light. No heavy truths are spoken. No confessions made. No warnings offered. The moment does not demand seriousness. It does not announce significance. Final moments never do. Someone asks about tomorrow. You answer casually. You speak of plans as if they are guaranteed, as if routine will protect you from change. Someone listens closely, not with excitement, with attention, as if each word matters more than you realize. The meal ends the way meals always end. Plates empty, glasses half full. No one rushes to clear the table. There is no reason to hurry. You sit there, unaware that memory is already forming. You say something about doing this more often, about slowing down, about not letting work take over everything. The words sound sincere. They are sincere. But sincerity without consistency is fragile. Someone smiles again, not because they doubt you, because they want to believe you. The chair remains pulled out. You help clear the table, a small act, a rare one. It feels good. It feels like balance being restored. You do not notice how much this matters to the person watching you do it. This is what makes loss unbearable later. Knowing you were capable of presence, knowing you were there, knowing you showed up when it mattered, but not often enough to change direction. The house feels calm, settled, right. You feel relieved, as if something has been fixed, as if effort has finally paid off. You believe the distance has closed because tonight felt close. You do not realize that moments do not erase patterns. You say good night without urgency, without weight. You expect tomorrow to arrive carrying the same calm. You believe the chair will be waiting again, just as it always has. You do not look back at the table. You do not memorize the way the light falls. You do not hold the moment longer than necessary. You think you have time. That is how final moments pass unnoticed. They do not come with music or warning. They do not slow time. They blend into routine and trust. Someone stays behind after you leave the room. They sit for a moment longer. They rest their hands on the table. They breathe carefully. You do not see this. You sleep that night believing stability has returned, that balance has been restored, that whatever felt wrong has corrected itself naturally. You wake up expecting repetition. Loss does not care about your expectations. The final meal is not dramatic. It is kind, ordinary, almost forgettable. That is why it becomes unbearable later. Because nothing was wrong. Because nothing warned you. Because the chair was filled and you believed that meant everything was okay. The contrast sharpens here, though you do not feel it yet. Normalcy sits beside finality. Assumption stands next to reality. Comfort hides the edge of loss. This chapter of your life closes without your permission, without your awareness, without your preparation. You will remember the meal later in fragments, the sound of voices, the shared rhythm, the way presence returned without effort. You will ask yourself why you did not notice how careful everything felt, why you did not sense the weight beneath the calm. But questions arrive after endings, not before. The chair is pushed back in neatly that night, not out of habit, out of care. Someone believes in order, believes in keeping things ready. You believe in tomorrow. The transition happens quietly, without sound, without drama. The story does not pause for you to catch up. This was the last meal together, not because love ended, not because conflict arrived, but because time does not ask permission. And the moment you believed would repeat forever has already slipped into memory, carrying with it everything you assumed you could return to later. You do not know it yet, but the chair has already begun to wait for no one. Chapter 7. What he left on the table. Loss does not arrive with noise. It does not crash into the room or knock things over. It arrives quietly, like a door closing somewhere you cannot see. By the time you notice, it has already locked itself from the inside. The chair is still there. That is the first thing you see. Pulled in, aligned with the table, not waiting, not ready, just placed where it belongs, as if no one ever meant to sit there again. The room feels balanced in a way that unsettles you. No one is waiting. You expect the house to feel different immediately, but it does not. Light enters the same way. The table looks the same. The clock moves forward without hesitation. Nothing reacts to what has happened. That is how permanence disguises itself. You move through the space slowly, unsure what you are looking for. Your body knows something before your mind accepts it. You feel it in the weight of the air, in the way silence presses instead of rests. The table holds objects: a plate, clean but unused, a folded napkin, a glass with a faint mark near the rim. These things should mean nothing. They have always been there. But now they feel deliberate, as if they were left on purpose, arranged with care. You pick up the napkin first. It is folded neatly, the way he always did it. Corners aligned, creases sharp. He believed order was a form of respect. You never asked why. The plate is cold, not recently cold, not waiting, just cold, as if it has learned there will be no one to warm it again. You touch it without thinking, then pull your hand back, surprised by the absence of heat. Absence teaches faster than words ever could. You notice a small note near the edge of the table. You have seen notes like this before: grocery reminders, short lists. Nothing emotional, nothing dramatic. You almost ignore it. Almost. The note is written in familiar handwriting. Careful, steady. It says only a few words. Dinner at 8, just in case. Just in case. Your chest tightens, sharp and sudden. The words do not accuse you. They do not explain themselves. They simply exist. Quiet evidence of hope that did not announce itself. You realize he kept routines alive for someone who was not there. Not to guilt you, not to pressure you. But because belief does not disappear the moment it is disappointed, it fades slowly. You find more notes as you move through the house. Not hidden, just placed where they made sense. On the counter, near the sink, inside a drawer you rarely open. Save some. He likes this. Wait a little. Each note feels like a conversation you missed. You begin to understand that while you were building the future, He was preserving the present. While you postponed moments, he protected them. While you believed love could wait, he practiced it daily without confirmation. The chair did not stay empty because love was missing. It stayed empty because love was ignored. You sit down slowly, finally pulling the chair out. It feels heavier than you expect. The wood presses against your hands as if it remembers being used with intention. You sit, and the table feels too close, too far, too quiet. You open your phone without thinking. Messages appear, old ones, short replies, missed calls you explained away. Promises marked with good intentions. I'll be late. Tomorrow. Next time. You scroll and stop. Saved messages sit at the top of the screen. Ones you never opened, ones you assumed were not urgent. You read them now, one by one, your breathing slowing with each line. No rush. Eat when you can. I'll keep it warm. These are not words of neglect. They are words of devotion spoken softly enough to be missed. You realize how carefully he protected you from feeling guilty, how intentionally he minimized his own disappointment so you could move freely. He never wanted to be an obstacle. He wanted to be support, and support, when taken for granted, becomes invisible. You walk back to the table. The objects look different now. Each one feels like proof. Proof that someone loved without demanding attention. Proof that devotion does not always announce itself. There is no dramatic goodbye. No letter explaining everything. He did not leave closure behind. He left evidence. Evidence of meals prepared and eaten alone. Evidence of routines maintained for two. Evidence of patience stretched thin without breaking. You remember how often you mistook silence for strength. How often you believed independence meant not needing you. How often you assumed that because he did not ask, he did not feel. The truth settles heavily now. He felt everything. He felt absence. He felt disappointment. He felt hope rise and fall quietly again and again. He chose not to share it because sharing might have made you uncomfortable. Love to him meant making room, not taking space. You find the last thing he left on the table without meaning to. A chair pushed in neatly, not out of habit, out of acceptance. That detail breaks you because it tells you exactly when waiting ended. Not in anger, not in resentment, in understanding. He did not stop loving you. He stopped expecting presence. You sit there longer now. You do not check the time. You do not move. The stillness you avoided for so long finally has you, and it shows you everything. Love was never missing. Attention was. You confuse absence with loss, but loss is only the final stage. Absence lived here long before this moment. It lived in delayed meals, in short replies, in promises made lightly and kept poorly. The chair remained because love hoped. The chair was pushed in because hope learned its limit. Silence speaks now, not gently, clearly. You see how devotion can exist without being felt, how patience can survive without reward, how someone can love you fully while slowly learning to live without you. The objects do not cry, they do not accuse. They simply remain where they were placed, doing what they were meant to do. Hold space. You finally understand what was left on the table. Not just notes, not just routines, not just a chair. A life shaped around your absence. A love that adjusted instead of demanding. A devotion that stayed quiet so you could stay comfortable. This is the break. Not because something shattered loudly, but because truth arrived fully formed and undeniable. Absence collapses into evidence. Silence collapses into devotion. You feel the weight of every postponed moment press into your chest. Regret arrives now, not as chaos, but as clarity. Clear enough to cut. You were never abandoned. You were waited for. And waiting has limits. You sit at the table long after you need to. The chair across from you stays empty. It does not accuse you. It does not invite you. It simply shows you what was always there. Love does not vanish suddenly. It withdraws carefully. And by the time you notice what was left on the table, the one who placed it there has already learned how to leave without making noise. This is the truth that breaks you. Not that love ended, but that love stayed long after it should have stopped waiting. And you were too busy believing in later to notice how much was being given now. Chapter 8. Eating Alone. You sit down alone for the first time, and nothing prepares you for how heavy the chair feels beneath you. It is the same chair, same place, same table, but the space across from you no longer holds expectation. It holds memory. You eat slowly, not because you want to, but because silence stretches time. There is no one to pace you, no one to interrupt your thoughts. Every movement feels louder now. Every sound feels exposed. You finally hear the silence. It is not empty. It is full of what used to be there. The sound of cutlery returns, but it is yours now. Fork against plate, knife resting. The rhythm feels unfamiliar, awkward. You are aware of every bite, every pause, every swallow. Eating has become an act of attention instead of routine. This is where aftermath begins. Not in chaos, in stillness. Grief does not rush you. It sits beside you and waits for you to notice it. You feel regret surface, not as pain yet, but as instruction. It points without shouting. It asks you to look, not to collapse. You look. You notice how often you once rushed meals, how often you stood instead of sitting, how often you treated shared moments as flexible, optional, replaceable. You thought efficiency was strength. You thought speed was discipline. Now you see the cost. And loss shifts into learning quietly. Guilt tries to speak first. It tells you what you failed to do, what you missed, what you delayed. You let it speak, but you do not let it stay in control. Guilt reacts. Reflection responds. You realize something important as you sit there. Responsibility does not begin with blame. It begins with awareness, with the willingness to sit in discomfort long enough to understand what it is teaching you. You eat another bite, slower this time. You breathe. You stay. Presence feels different now. It no longer feels inconvenient. It feels necessary, like water after thirst, like rest after exhaustion. You think about how presence must be practiced, not promised, not assumed, practiced. Like a skill you ignored because you believed it would always be there when you needed it. The silence teaches you this without words. You remember moments you thought were small, meals skipped, conversations shortened, chairs left empty without thought. Those moments were not small, they were shaping you. You understand now that love does not survive on intention alone. It survives on attention repeated daily, especially when it feels unnecessary. Eating alone removes all excuses. There is no schedule to hide behind, no distraction to blame, just you, the chair, and the space where someone once waited. The lesson feels firm but fair. You are not being punished. You are being taught. The pain shifts again. It becomes quieter, more focused. It no longer asks, "Why did this happen?" It asks, "What will you do with what you see now?" This is where healing actually begins, not with comfort, not with reassurance, with responsibility. You accept that presence is a discipline, that attention is a choice, that love is not something you feel only when it is easy, but something you practice when it is uncomfortable. You sit through the meal instead of rushing it. You let thoughts come and go without escaping them. You let regret speak, then soften into resolve. You understand that reflection is stronger than reaction. Reaction wants to erase pain quickly. Reflection wants to transform it slowly. You finish eating and do not stand up immediately. You remain seated, hands resting on the table. This stillness feels different now, not heavy, grounded. You think about the kind of person you want to become, not someone who promises better later, someone who chooses presence now, not someone who equates effort with love, someone who understands attention is love. You see how easy it is to drift away without meaning to, how distraction disguises itself as responsibility, how absence can feel productive until it becomes permanent. This awareness does not crush you, it steadies you. You realize that while you cannot change what has already passed, you can change how you live from here. You can sit down, you can stay, you can listen fully instead of partially. Eating alone becomes a ritual of learning. Each meal reminds you of what attention feels like when it is not shared. It teaches you to value presence while it exists, not after it is gone. The silence is no longer just loss. It is instruction. You begin to notice other moments too. Conversations where you almost interrupt. Times when your mind drifts while someone else speaks. You catch yourself now, gently, without shame. You practice staying. This is not dramatic transformation. It is quiet discipline, the kind that builds character without applause, the kind that changes direction slowly, permanently. You realize that healing is not about forgetting pain. It is about using pain to become more aware, more responsible, more intentional. You clear the table carefully, not out of habit, out of respect. Each movement feels deliberate. Each sound feels honest. The chair remains where it is. You do not avoid it. You do not resent it. You acknowledge it. You accept that some lessons arrive too late to prevent loss, but not too late to prevent repetition. Eating alone has taught you something no speech ever could. Presence must be chosen. Attention must be practiced. Love must be lived, not assumed. You leave the table with a different posture, slower, more grounded, more aware of the space you occupy and the space you leave behind. The silence does not disappear when you stand up. It follows you gently, reminding you of what matters. You are no longer afraid of it, because silence, when listened to, becomes guidance. This is how aftermath turns into growth, not by rushing forward, but by sitting still long enough to learn. You ate alone, you listened fully, and for the first time, presence no longer felt optional. It felt essential. This is where healing begins. The chair is still there. The chair is still there. It has not moved. It has not disappeared. It has not made a sound. It remains where it has always been, quiet and ordinary, waiting to be noticed for what it truly is. An invitation. This is where the lesson becomes clear. Not emotional, not dramatic. Clear. Presence is not a feeling. It is a decision. One you make daily, one you practice when it feels inconvenient, one you choose before regret teaches you the cost of delay. You have learned now that love does not collapse suddenly. It fades when attention is postponed too many times. You have learned that silence can mean patience, and patience can mean exhaustion. You have learned that waiting has limits, The chair was never asking for perfection. It was asking for participation. Distraction will always offer excuses. It will tell you there is more time, that this moment can wait, that ambition justifies absence. Distraction feels powerful because it keeps you moving, but movement without awareness leads you away from what matters. Focus is quieter. Focus asks you to stop, to sit down, to stay longer than feels comfortable. Focus asks you to look at the people in front of you instead of the future you are chasing. This is the discipline that changes everything. Do not confuse devotion with intensity. Devotion is consistency. It is showing up when nothing dramatic is happening. It is listening fully when the conversation feels ordinary. It is choosing presence before absence becomes permanent. Delay feels harmless. Delay feels responsible. Delay feels safe, but delay accumulates. It turns intentions into memories and opportunities into monuments. You know this now. The chair can be an invitation or a reminder, a place to sit, or a symbol of what you missed. The difference is decided by what you do next, not what you regret. Mastery does not come from knowing this lesson. It comes from living it. Sit down when it matters. Stay when it would be easier to leave. Listen when silence would be more comfortable. This is not about guilt. Guilt looks backward and freezes you. Responsibility looks forward and steadies you. You cannot undo what has already passed, but you can decide what kind of person you are becoming. Someone who assumes love will wait, or someone who understands that presence must be practiced while it is still possible. Look at your life honestly. Who is waiting quietly? Which chairs are always ready? Which moments are being postponed? Do not wait for loss to teach you awareness. Awareness is available now, without pain, if you are willing to choose it. The world will keep pulling you forward. Work will demand more. Distraction will grow louder. Comfort will ask you to delay again. This will not stop. That is why discipline matters. Discipline is not punishment, it is protection. Protection of what matters before it disappears quietly. Make presence your standard, not your exception. Treat ordinary moments as the foundation of love, not as something to rush through on the way to something better. There is nothing waiting in the future that is more important than what is asking for your attention now. The chair is still there, not to accuse you, not to shame you, but to remind you that you still have a choice. Sit down today, not tomorrow, not next time. Sit while the invitation still exists. This is how regret turns into mastery. This is how distraction turns into focus. This is how love stays alive. The chair does not need you to be perfect. It needs you to be present. And presence, once chosen, changes everything quietly, permanently, and without applause. The chair is still there. The question is no longer whether it will wait. The question is whether you will finally sit down. Love does not always ask for attention. Sometimes it only asks for presence. And when presence is delayed too long, love has nowhere to sit. This is the quiet truth at the heart of the story. Love does not always speak loudly or demand space. Often it waits, it adapts, it makes itself smaller so your life can feel easier. And because it does not interrupt, it is easy to overlook. Presence is not about grand gestures or perfect words. It is about choosing to be fully there when nothing dramatic is happening. Sitting down, staying a little longer, listening without rushing. These small acts are not small at all. They are how love survives. When presence is delayed, love does not always fight back. It grows quiet. It learns to live with less. And one day it may stop waiting, not out of anger, but out of understanding. That is when regret arrives, not as punishment, but as clarity. The lesson is simple, but it requires discipline. Love must be practiced while it is still possible. Attention must be given before silence becomes permanent. Presence is not an emotion you feel when it is convenient. It is a responsibility you choose when it matters most.